Alright guys, so I want to talk about the male advantage. I am a believer in the male advantage. It's definitely been popularized and I came across it by First Man. I definitely think it's the case. For those of you that don't know the male advantage, it's the idea that men peak from 30 plus. Alright, usually around the age of 35, 35 to sort of 50 can be your best years. I'm a believer in that if you put in the work. All right, most people don't put in the work. That's why they hit 30 and they start dramatically going downhill. But the men that do put in the work, they tend to get better. They tend to look better, be in better shape, start earning more money. So when you look at this collectively, holistically, they end up reaching peak years later on. Whereas women peak younger, right? They're peaking in their early 20s and so on, and then they tend to hit 30 and start regressing, let's say. I'm a believer in that process. There's one big risk that a lot of these guys are not talking about or not thinking about. And that's with regards to having children. And I mean this in the sense that they're running the risk by waiting to these peak years, 35 plus, and then maybe enjoying that for a few years and then trying to settle down and have kids. There's an issue with that. You run a risk. Now, the common trope you hear is that men can have kids until they're like 55, 60. And we can. Biologically, we can. We don't have the same biological clock as women. Women's biological clock starts ticking at 30. Every year after the age of 30 for a woman becomes significantly more difficult to conceive a child. All right, we don't have that as men. But the problem is that you have. And I'm going to run the scenario out, this male advantage scenario. So let's say you hit 35, boom, you've hit your probably your absolute peak in terms of looks, your status, your money and so on and everything else. And you're at this stage where you're like, right, I just want to make the most of this. The way Chris sells it and a lot of other people sell the male advantage is you reach that peak, you enjoy it. Now you can attract 9s and 10s, the type of women you can never attract. Enjoy that, be single, have a good time for a little while, and then find a really good woman. So let's say you hit 35 and you enjoy that for a few years. You're sleeping with 8s, 9s, 10s, all these great women. You're getting the attraction from women you never had before, or more attraction from a wider range of women. And you enjoy it till you're up 38 and you say, you know what, I want to settle down now. Okay, great, let's settle down. Now you're 38. Now the thing is, you have to think, you need a woman who's if you want children and you're smart about this, you need a woman who's in peak fertile years. So let's say you need a woman who's 27, 28. Well, that's 10 years difference. Now the average age that women do tend to like older men, but the average age difference that women like in a man is 4 years. It's not 10 and plus. Now, of course, there's outliers here. And you could say, well, we're talking about outliers, but there's outliers amongst the outliers. It's pretty rare that you find women who are going to be liking guys 10, 15, 20 years their senior. It's actually pretty rare, super, super rare. So you'll be dealing with that. So now you've got to find a woman who's 10 years younger than you in good years, because you need a couple of years to get to know them, right? You're 38. Couple of years to get to know this 27, 28-year-old. She hits 30, you hit 40. Well then, what if it goes wrong? What if something happens? What if you realize you don't like each other? You're not into each other, fizzles out, there come in some problems, maybe she cheats on you or so on, and you break up, okay? Now you're 40. You got to do it again. Now you've got to meet women, there's a bigger age gap. And then the older you get, yeah, you're at the top, you're at the peak, but you're competing with younger guys. And most of these women would prefer a guy who's, 4 or 5 years older than them, doing pretty well, on the way up, has more in common, looks and is younger than a guy who's now into the 40s. Again, not all the time. If you're at the top, you're Leonardo DiCaprio's, right? He's still banging 21-year-olds. You could probably marry one of them if you wanted. But again, that's so rare. And if you're selling this idea on a larger scale of the male advantage, The general guy has to think about this. The general guy that's on that journey has to think about this. So now you're 40 and you get to know another girl. Same thing, you need some time to get to know her. A couple of years pass, doesn't work out. Now you're 42 and now you're struggling. And before you know it, it might just be too late. You've missed that window. Now you can't get the women. Now you're starting to regress now. Now you're not looking as good. Now you're starting to look older. Or the age difference is too much and you don't have things in common with these women. And remember, you can say, well, you can get a 22, 23-year-old. Most women at that age aren't looking for anything serious, particularly with much older guys. Most women now are wanting to settle down later on in life. Of course, like I said, outliers always. But this is something you have to think about. If you want to run that risk, you want to hit your mid-30s, enjoy your peak, and then later on in your 30s, early 40s, try to look to settle down, that's a big age gap. And you're competing with other guys, younger guys, and there's more and more younger guys killing it. And like I said, those women would prefer, if, let's say you're making $1 million a year at 40, most of those women at 27, 28, they're gonna prefer a guy who's like 32, 33, earning 100 grand, 200 grand a year over you. And they see him progressing and getting better as well and about to reach his peak. So you're competing with a lot of those guys who are younger now, closer to their age. You don't want to miss that window. We don't want to fall into the trap of so many women now, right? Over 50% of British women now are reaching 30 without children. 50% of those women will never have children. And 90% of those women will regret it. And the reason, number one reason they give for this is they say, I left it too late. You know, met a guy when I wanted to settle down, didn't work out, met another one, didn't work out, but before you know it, I was too old. And that can happen to guys too. So I would say my advice is maybe not be so set on this idea of like, you know, I'll wait until I'm late 30s, 40s. Maybe not. You know, take that into consideration. And if you meet a great girl on the way, maybe make the most of that. That's kind of what I did. You know, I was 23 when I met my now wife. And I had no plan. I had absolutely no plan to get married and settle down, but it just happened that way. I realized this is a great woman. I can't let her go. And I have no regrets over that. Just something to think about. And if you're involved in the manosphere here and you like Chris's stuff and the male advantage and you have that idea in your head, let me know what you think, guys. Let me know what you think about what I'm saying. Just, I view it as a different perspective and something to add into the conversation, because most men do want children. That is so true. So let me know what you think. I'll get back to you. Join me for the next video.